infrastructure white paper, which has been drafted through significant stakeholder development and written by Travis Wood, who will be presenting on it. And that will be followed by a panel of experts to talk about what we're currently doing and what needs to be done. But first up, we have an update on the Missouri State Energy Planning process. We'll hear from Martin Hyman. He's the Senior Energy Policy Analyst with the Missouri Division of Energy. Martin began working with the division in 2014. In addition to performing data analysis and writing activities for the MOSEP process, he does assist with cross-division duties, and he has served as an expert on matters including renewable energy, energy efficiency, and rate design. As many of you know, MEI has been committed to supporting Missouri's development of a stakeholder-driven state energy plan since our first white paper in 2015, where we identified economic development benefits for those states that had a plan, no matter the direction. If there was a plan, it had better outcomes following the 2008 recession. Energy prices were stable, economic development growth bounced back quicker. So there's a significant value there. And what we saw in the most effective ones were those that were driven by stakeholders, responsive to stakeholders, and look to solve some of those problems that are out there. And had a team type effect and process. So we are excited to see the administration and the Division of Energy and the Department of Natural Resources move forward in 2021 and beyond on a state energy plan that looks to hear from stakeholders. And we've been meeting for a number of months on this, Marty, and I know we're getting close to being able to lay down some pavement and start to move forward with some action items. So excited to hear from you today on where you think we are and our next steps. So I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Josh. I'm glad to be here. He already introduced me, so I don't need to say who I am. So next slide, please. A little bit about the folks I work for at the Division of Energy. We are the State Energy Office for Missouri. Our focus is on affordable, reliable, Missouri-made energy, and we accomplish that by assisting with initiatives at the regional level based on those regions' particular needs, as well as by serving as a source of energy information for citizens, stakeholders, and policymakers. Most of our funding comes through the U.S. Department of Energy State Energy Program and Weatherization Assistance Program, as well as through earnings from our energy loan program and a portion of the state low-income home energy assistance program allocation that supports additional weatherization. Next slide, please. Our main activities include the energy loan program, which provides low-interest loans to certain public sector entities for cost-saving energy improvements. The low-income weatherization assistance program, which works to help improve the health, comfort, safety, and energy efficiency of income-qualified households. The state energy planning process, which I'll obviously talk about a bit today. State fleet reporting and working with the Office of Administration on state building efficiency. Energy efficiency education and outreach, as well as outreach on our recently completed Roadmap to Resilience grant. And this is not an exclusive list, but last of all here, certifying facilities for eligibility in compliance with the renewable energy standard. Next slide, please. So if you've been on any of the meetings that Josh just alluded to over the past few months, you've probably heard a lot of this. Hopefully I can add a little more color today on what our vision is for the state energy planning process. And that vision, just at a high level, is to identify and address topics critical to the state's current and future energy needs through an ongoing series of stakeholder engagement workshops. And we're accomplishing that through regionally focused initiatives unified by state-level core values. We also want to identify metrics to measure success of these initiatives. And one key thing that I'll emphasize here is this is going to be an iterative process. This is just the first cycle of MOSEP. We do anticipate additional cycles so that there is recurring work and engagement to address those initiatives that we might not get to this cycle for whatever reason. And of course, stakeholders can bring forward ideas that we can't get to at this point in other forums if they so choose. Next slide, please. The regions that we're using are based on those from the Department of Economic Development's Regional Engagement Team. We actually consulted with them, and that was part of the idea of using this map, was to leverage their expertise to figure out what stakeholders we could invite to the process. And so we actually got some lists of folks for each of these regions that we then tried to bring on board to our stakeholder meetings. Next slide, please. So the core values that I alluded to earlier are to assure secure, reliable, and resilient energy infrastructure and supplies, enhance our state's competitive position in business retention, expansion, and attraction through affordable rates and renewable energy options, to develop diverse in-state energy resources, to create opportunities for energy-related technological innovation and workforce development, to ensure affordability and equity in access to energy resources, services, and programs, and of course, consistent with our department's mission statement, to promote the efficient and environmentally sound use of energy. Next slide, please. So what we've done so far includes, way at the beginning of this whole process, releasing an energy data and trends document. And the goal there was to update a lot of the statewide energy landscape type data that we had in the 2015 Comprehensive State Energy Plan. We also released some interactive, automatically updating online data tools, which make me excited as an energy nerd. The first one, the Energy Data Dashboard, gets at that landscape level data. In fact, we just added a little bit more to it not too long ago. And then the Missouri Energy Bulletin data tool takes a lot of that static data that appeared in PDF format for the Energy Bulletin and makes it more interactive and updating automatically. We also held a kickoff workshop for this process all the way back in October of 2020. And following that workshop and stakeholder input, we produced a summary and action report that talks about where we are going to be going. Next slide, please. So what we outline as our next steps include at least 3 rounds of regional meetings. We've actually already completed the first round back in September of this year, and that was to facilitate the discussion of potential regional initiatives by getting input from stakeholders, having presentations of ideas, that sort of thing. And right now we're in the second round of meetings, which we anticipate completing next week with the North Region meeting. And our goal here is to further refine those initiatives, identify metrics to track initiative progress, and identify champions who can partner with us to push the ball forward. And that's really a crucial item there that I'll get into in a little bit. The third round of meetings, which will occur early next year, we plan to finalize initiative plans and metrics, identify next steps that stakeholders have flagged for us, and review a draft regional summary and action report for each initiative. And I had noted that this is going to be an iterative process between cycles. It's also to some extent going to evolve as we go along and see what the needs are for these particular initiatives. And to that end, we do also anticipate needing to have work groups and ongoing work between meetings through Basecamp or email or other such forums. After we've done the third round of meetings next year, we'll have a statewide wrap-up meeting where all the regions can share progress with each other and where we can present a statewide summary and action report that provides that sort of landscape level overview and wraps up all of those regional summary and action reports into a nice little bow. Next slide, please. So one thing that's really key here is emphasizing what an initiative is. And we're defining an initiative for this process as any work, effort, process, or project that contributes toward the advancement, achievement, or support of any of the 6 MOSEP core values. And we're hoping to find initiatives that are regionally relevant, consensus-based to the greatest extent possible, actionable, time-bound, and measurable. And those are some of the key criteria that we're using as we hone in on what those initiatives are going to be for this first cycle. Next slide, please. Another big part of us figuring out what our initiatives are going to be is finding champions. And champions are folks or organizations that are motivated and interested in a particular idea, and they would partner with us to help move the ball forward on an initiative, lead work groups, and collaborate with us on reports and metrics. And we will be there to support folks from, to certain degrees from the administrative side, as well as to provide technical resources from us, as well as partners and thought leaders. So the idea of being a champion is not necessarily to scare people off, but to make sure that these are things that will persist well outside of the MOSEP process and beyond, through with some support from us. And the other benefits you get from, in addition to just those technical and administrative resources from us, you'll get support for progress on the initiative, and you'll get visibility, attention, awareness, and documentation, which are always good things for moving the ball forward. Next slide, please. So this is the big fun slide, and I think I'm not going to read everything off on here, except to note that one of the initiatives that's come up more recently that's not on here is electric vehicle charging. That's one that we intend to talk about and coordinate closely with others who are working on that topic, including those within our own department. And I'm sure Josh and I and maybe whoever else is on the call today, we can get into a little bit of where we're looking at the initiatives at this point, which ones we're looking at. So we might want to jump back to this slide for the Q&A and discussion. For now, though, if you'll go to the next slide. Just wanted to thank everybody again for having me here. There's my contact information. You can also email our state energy planning process inbox at State Energy Plan, that's all one word, at dnr.mo.gov. And if you visit our website, you can get more information on the process, including recordings of all of the meetings that we've had so far, notes typed up by yours truly, and copies of the PowerPoint slide decks. So there's a lot on there if you want to take a look and see where we've been so far and get a sense of where we might be going. So with that, Josh, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thanks, Marty. Thanks for moving that, Travis. So just so everyone's clear from what Marty was saying, there's been regional meetings, St. Louis, Southeast Missouri, Southwest, Central, North, and Kansas City, about 5 or 6 regions. Would you say, Marty, about anywhere from, I think low's been in around 50, 45 participants up to about 75? That seem about right?
Yeah, I'd say that's about right for round one. We've certainly seen somewhat lighter attendance in round two. That doesn't necessarily surprise me, though, as we start to sort of set expectations, see what the initiatives might be, that you start to get people who are more focused on particular ideas. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the turnout we've gotten so far.
Okay. And so as Marty said, the process has been that folks would provide a presentation, and it seems that the first domino to drop to move something forward would be that an organization would say they were willing to quote unquote champion it. Would you say that's right, Marty?
Yeah, I'd say that's a huge part of it. I mean, it's certainly not the only domino, but the champions are really key to getting these things moving forward, especially, to the extent we start looking at, multiple initiatives per region. It's really going to be important to have those partners to help us out.
Well, I guess to that point, if there are no champions, that would mean that the state or the division would be the quote unquote champion. Do you see any of these or other topics where you are going to be the champion and not a stakeholder?
It's entirely possible. I think so far, though, the good news is that we have had folks stepping up to say that they'll work with us on some of these. For example, on the bioethanol, biodiesel, and those related topics, we've been fortunate to have folks from those particular industries step forward and say that they'd be willing to work with us. And I think we're probably going to have more of a bioenergy group, or biofuels group rather, just to sort of broaden the scope and not overly focus on one particular source. See if I can find another good example here. I think we're fortunate also to have been working with Dr. Sanjeev Khanna quite a bit on some of the stuff related to industrial efficiency and outreach. We will probably be working more on that one with him. And so that's another one where I would say we have someone who's willing to partner with us. And so, like I say, I think we've been pretty fortunate so far.
So when we look at this list, and I encourage folks, if you have questions about which topics have been selected or details about what's going on, definitely type in some questions here and let us know. But when we look at this list here, I unfortunately couldn't make the meeting on the 7th for this and a couple other things. But what I saw, you had mentioned the Industrial Assessment Center, you had mentioned biofuels. I understand that there's some solar permitting and solar education that seems to have a champion. Can you talk a little bit about those two?
Yeah, sorry, I can't believe I forgot about that one. So the solar permitting one, and then there's another one I'd like to talk about as well. The solar permitting one was brought forward to us by Missouri Solar Energy Industries Association. The discussions around it really started when I went to their summit in Independence. I guess that was last month. And so we gave them an opportunity, sort of at our last call, if you will, in these round 2 meetings to present on the topic. And that work group is already up and running and talking. They're meeting at, I believe it's 3:15 p.m. on Wednesdays is the recurring schedule. But the idea there is basically that it can take a while for solar projects to get permitted in some jurisdictions. And the National Renewable Energy Laboratory has actually developed a tool that helps with automating that. Now, it only works in certain circumstances in terms of like codes and system specifications. So I think we're kind of trying to navigate what are the jurisdictions that'll be the best to target for rolling out Solar App Plus in Missouri. And I think one other interesting avenue of exploration will be compiling things that might be required to make it useful in other jurisdictions. Because, for example, the codes that it uses are kind of recent compared to what some Missouri entities may be using, which can be a bit of a limitation. The other initiative I wanted to highlight was one that actually got brought forward to us on Basecamp, and that was from Maureen Bales, and that's on a cool idea to basically work on installing wind and solar at schools and other local governmental units, and use that as a way to also help with vocational training at a local community college. So that's another one that I'm really excited about, and I'm hoping that we can connect at some point with the folks from Missouri Energy Workforce that you had on yesterday. And we've been sitting in on some of those calls because I'm hoping that they have some really good resources that we can plug into that one. So that just kind of ties into working with stakeholders on a sort of ground level type planning process.
Thank you. There were a couple others. I know that we had brought forward wastewater treatment facilities, biodigesters, combined heat and power combination, or even broadening that, i.e. using that waste and turning it into a biogas that can be used for energy. That is one that I know we had brought up, as well as an infrastructure bank, specifically either to fund that or something else. Is there anything else that came up in the Kansas City one on the 7th?
Yeah, there were a few ideas that came up. One was related to helping low and moderate income households with addressing their high energy burdens. That's one we're certainly, going to take a look at as we start to narrow down this list. Trying to think, I feel like there was another one. It's just slipping my mind at the moment. And I've still got the notes out for processing internally before we publish them. But that was one of the ones that really hit my radar as a big one that we're probably going to take another look at as a potential topic, if not separately, at least to weave in some of these other things. And it's certainly consistent with that value statement item on equity in access.
Okay. It seems we've identified a couple different entities that have brought these issues forward and thus can be categorized as champions. Do you all define a champion in any way, shape, or form?
Our definition, like I had on the last slide, basically it's we don't want it to scare people off and think, oh my God, I'm carrying all of the water here. It's more of partnering with us to sort of help with work group formation, identifying who needs to be at the table, identifying, some of the barriers, challenges, and opportunities involved with an initiative, like for example, with solar permitting, what are the requirements for using Solar App Plus from NREL, and, where are there the opportunities in Missouri and the challenges, and, working hand in hand with those champions to get the initiative pushed through.
There is a question, another question we had, and that is there a particular item or program on the list that will benefit from any of the new federal infrastructure legislation funding?
It is entirely possible. The challenge for us is this is a very large bill that passed, and we're still trying to get our hands around it in conjunction with partners from the National Association of State Energy Officials. which is, for lack of a better word, a trade group representing other state energy offices like ours. There are certainly some buckets of funding that we're fairly sure we're going to get. We have a rough guess on the amounts, like, for example, state energy program formula funding, weatherization assistance program formula funding. There are other buckets where it's slightly less clear exactly what we will get or how we will get it. It might be competitive, or it might be a program that DOE basically has to stand up from scratch. And so we're kind of going to be looking in the next 6 months plus from the passage of that legislation at what money might be coming down and what are the opportunities and synergies.
Okay. When we look at this list and the champions, you'd mentioned a report next year. Is it the expectation that there's a timeline set on these and that something actual will occur within 12 months or so?
Yeah, sorry.
No, that was it. Just 12 months or so?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it'll be 12 months or how long. It'll really depend on the initiative, but it is definitely our goal to make these time bound. And certainly the metrics that we end up establishing aren't going to work very well if we just leave it open-ended, as at some point in the future, we will do this. So that is absolutely our intent, to have these be very concrete things that have timelines and next steps. And if there are any challenges, opportunities, or barriers identified, potential solutions.
Do you see the division having to filter out in any of these or potential ones for the next meeting or so, where there may be some concern or opposition, or have you heard any to date?
I think the main thing we'll be one of the things we'll be looking at, we won't really be filtering. I will say that we are looking for consensus-based ideas to the greatest extent possible. So if there is a lot of pushback from folks on something, it's probably not going to be something that'll fit that particular criterion for these initiatives. So I think that'll be one factor in sort of figuring out which ones move forward, along with identifying those partners to work with us and making sure that they are those sort of actionable, time-bound, and measurable things that we can get done.
Okay. Let's see one more here. What excites you the most in regards to the SEP process? Are there particular initiatives or topics that have seen a lot of interest?
Well, I feel like this is the question of what is your favorite child? So I'll have to be a little careful here in answering. But I think there are a lot of these that are really exciting to me. I think the ones that we've already sort of got nailed down, like on Solar App Plus and the vocational training and workforce stuff, are really exciting to me. But I'm excited about a lot of these other ones as well. Weatherization outreach and workforce development is a good example. I mean, that's one that we know, hearing from our community action agencies that are our sub-grantees by and large for the weatherization program, that has been an ongoing issue. So that's another one that I think is pretty exciting. I was really excited to hear about the renewable natural gas activities that are going on in the North Region Round 1 meeting. I'm not sure if there will be anything there or not in terms of a champion and a particular action item to move forward. But that's another, if nothing else, that was just an exciting thing to hear about in Round 1. And if you don't mind, I do see a comment in the chat about wanting to be included on some of these. And I think the best way to be involved would be to email us. And I can respond with my email info in the chat to email us, either me, myself, or the State Energy Planning inbox.
Great. Well, Marty, I'll let you respond to Tim there and make sure that he's included. But and for anyone else interested, again, here's the information that was shared, the website where you can find more information, emailing the department, looking for the presentations and the other work that has been done. But as you know, what we heard yesterday was that there's a number of these items that will be funded from the infrastructure, whether that's wastewater, a lot of water funding coming down. The Department of Natural Resources is already requesting input on where to put, I think it's like $250 million for water and clean water, wastewater. We look at green banks, which we'll be talking about next. Energy efficiency will also be a large one. And while you had mentioned it, and it's not necessarily on the list yet, but electric vehicle infrastructure, that is also one that is being funded. So a number of these could be bolstered beyond just the champions and stakeholders efforts, but with some dollars that could see us accelerate the activity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot to look forward to, and a lot of legwork to be done to get us ready for all that money. And I mean, you've even got the, you alluded to the request for information that DNR has out. That's even looking just at the American Rescue Plan funding that was from earlier this year. So we've already got one fire hose of funding at the state level, and now we've got one, another coming our way, and depending on what happens in Congress, maybe yet another.
Absolutely. Well, Marty, thank you so much for spending your morning with us. Appreciate it very much. Again, check that stuff out. Do engage. MEI does have a website dedicated to this as well called moenergyplan.org. So you can check that out as well. But thank you. Have a great rest of your day. Marty, appreciate it.
Thank you.
So before we